before I edit.
Nice.
So we're live, and we're behind the scenes. Ashley, let's see. Ashley. What I do, Ashley, is don't worry too much about the introduction. I take information from the interview, and then I draft up your introduction plus whatever you send me for your website, things of that nature.
Excellent.
So we're probably not as rehearsed as normal today.
Okay.
Ashley and I, let's see, we're checking our equipment. This looks good. This is the most important thing I start. In fact, I'll start it now. I'll tune it. Okay, Ashley, just test.
So, timeline interviews with Bill Conrad. I will call your Skype address or phone number if I don't call you within 5 minutes from the scheduled interview time.
You look at the old one here. We're doing it face-to-face in the Reno Collective. We look good here. I think we're good to go. It's amazing. That used to take me 10 or 15 minutes just to get this set up. So the main thing is to keep consistent. Whatever angle you are or distance is to be consistent, even though I can adjust it with my high-speed Adobe Edition software.
Nice.
So actually, before we start anything else up today, how's your day going?
Pretty good. I just sent one of the two kids that I have at home on vacation with her friends, so now I only have one left while my husband's out of town, which is
wow. How old are your kids?
A little blessing. 12 and 14.
Okay. One thing we have to be careful with these cups. Sometimes I bring paper cups because they will make noise when you set them down.
Oh,
that will be heard right there.
Okay.
So you don't have anything behind you to set on. I'll set mine back here.
Yeah, let me get rid of this.
The fun stuff. Let's see. While we're doing that, I'm going to read the disclosure while we figure out where to put the cup. Disclosure. Both parties use the interview in part or full for commercial, educational, or promotional purposes. It may be reproduced, distributed, and used in future speeches, books, media for both parties, or to their sign. Both parties agree to hold harmless each other from any claims, damages, or liability. Basically what it does, it gives us both full access to rights to the information. You can do whatever you want for the information.
And you can do whatever you want.
Right, as long as it's not used in a malicious way.
Okay.
Which is like politics, it might be a malicious way.
Yeah.
So we can practice the rehearsal at the start. I'm just going to say, let's see, it's Jennings, right? J-E-N-N-I-N-G-S. Are you related to William Jennings Bryan by any chance?
No.
I am.
Are you really?
Yes, that's why I asked.
No, and it's my husband's surname, so.
Because Jennings came from the mother of William Jennings Bryan, I believe. That was
interesting.
So I'm on the Bryan side, B-R-Y-N.
Okay. I think my father-in-law is actually related.
Okay. Ashley, welcome to Timelines of Success.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Bill.
I appreciate it. Well, it's good to have you here today. We're at the Reno Collective. And I got that right. It's the Reno Collective, not just the Collective.
Corrective.
Correct.
Collective.
One of those days. So Ashley, tell me a little bit about your business and what you do.
My big thing is that I'm actually the founder and CEO of Girlmade, and what we do is we accelerate female-led companies that are scalable. And what that is I mean, if you want to give a good example is something like Facebook or Google. A lot of these tech companies that you've heard of were once startups. And so what we try to do is we try to put these startups through a 3-month program with mentorship, a little bit of education, and a co-working space, and try to get them some funding at the very end of the program.
So Girlmade, I know you have some other programs. For example, you're having a seminar coming up right now, one-day seminar?
Yes, we do.
Now, how does that hook in with Girlmade?
So when we had our first program with 6 female-led companies last fall, what happened was we started to see some patterns with the way that women did business that we don't see with the men. And so we thought that it might be a good idea to start younger, to sort of try to alleviate some of those bad habits that some of the women have brought into their businesses. So we decided to have a conference called Girl Empire for high school girls.
So Girlmade is more than just starting with high school. It goes all the way up.
Yes. The average age of the program in the fall was actually 48 years old.
48. So if someone's listening right now, they can go to the website and get some information and follow along.
Yeah, and they can actually see some of the companies that went through the program.
What is the website?
You can go to http.
We can break for a second.
Yeah, it's girl. I have to spell it out. It's girl, so GIRLMA, and then .de.
Okay, and I'll clean that up. So girl, say that again.
So Girlmade, essentially. So it's girlma.de.
Girlma.de. Girlmade.
Yeah.
Girlmade.com.
No .com, yes.
Girlmade.de.
Girlma.de.
Girlma.de.
So it's a German URL.
How did you end up with that URL?
So .com was taken, of course, and so we were looking at other possible options, which would make it longer, like girlmadeaccelerator.com or something like that. So instead, we did girlma.de.
Interesting. Okay, we got it down. Shorter is better, generally. Easier to type.
Yes, I like it shorter. Exactly. We got it down in the number of characters.
So tell us more about the company.
So I can tell you a little bit of the story of how I started it and why.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
in fact, this is your journey, how you started and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, awesome. So I started this in 2012, and the reason I started is because I had seen my husband go through a program called Techstars, and they have several programs around the world now, but he was in the New York City 2011 program. And when I saw him go through that, I thought it was just such an electric energy there, and it was 3 months of just crazy. I mean, you had each team, there were 10 companies, and each team was in this co-working space for 16 hours a day, just working on their product, pivoting, meeting with mentors, everybody from Seth Godin to Brad Feld, to just other startup founders that we know and love that are in the media. And so I would go visit for a week at a time, basically, and saw that while it was an amazing program, there were very few women in the program. So I started to ponder what it would look like if there were more women in the program, and how that would change the dynamic. So I came back and I actually decided to start my own sort of mini version of Techstars called Girlmade. And the one requirement was that you needed to have at least one female co-founder with equity stake.
Right. Okay. That's very good. My wife actually owns a real estate brokerage in California, and she's starting one here.
Nice.
But I'll tell you what, she's getting off to a slow start here. She's older, and starting a business is a lot of work.
Yes.
In fact, from my interviews, I'm finding that it's really much more work than people expect. And it's the hardest thing. Some of the people I've interviewed have done amazing things in the civilian sector. There are some West Point grads, things of that nature. But what they're telling me is the hardest thing they've done is start a business and getting it going.
Yeah.
And it's even tougher in some aspects because there still is a little bit of a glass ceiling with women. I know that. I've seen that. But it's breaking open and more all the time. You have more CFOs in the very top positions who are female, but there's still more male.
Yeah.
And who knows why that happens? Maybe it's because of a family.
Yeah, there's it's hard to say. There's so many factors. Some is cultural conditioning. Some is just men typically not wanting to. Some men feeling threatened. There's several factors. Women holding themselves back because they want to start a family, things like that. So
I think it's changed a lot, though. I graduated in 1980 from West Point, very first class of women. So I've seen the evolution. I've seen the challenge, especially the very first women who went through the program. And I think it's more integrated now and easier.
For sure.
So tell me about more of your story in starting it and some of the challenges you had getting it going.
Sure. So in larger cities, so we're like a tier 2 city here in Reno, and so in larger cities, like take for example, the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, even Austin and New York City, people are starting to become familiar with startup terminology. Mm-hmm. So things like lean startup, how to pitch, things like that are becoming just kind of commonplace or common terminology in those cities because you have so many different meetups and different pitch contests and different groups that kind of encourage that sort of thing. Sort of a new wave of entrepreneurism. And so when I got to Reno, I was not from here originally, and when I got here, I noticed that there's been a larger, so one of my challenges is that there's been a large education piece, because Reno, that terminology isn't really familiar to everybody here.
Right, no, I 100% agree that Reno, Nevada is different than anywhere else I've been. In fact, in some aspects, I think it's 10 to 12 years behind culturally in some of the systems. For example, newspapers here are still alive. In California, they've really had a hard time, especially the Central Valley, some of the Sacramento, the Modesto Bay, they're almost dead because the technology has come in there and people have applied it. Here, I think it's a little bit older demographic, yet it's a great place for outdoors. It's just a different culture. So how long have you been here in Reno, Nevada?
I've been here for 7 years. It'll be 7 years coming up.
That's time to really know it well. It's a city of about 200,000, which isn't very big.
No.
I mean, Modesto is 200, about the same size. It's the 17th or 18th largest city in California. But there's 45 million people there. And here, like, there's only a couple 100,000 within the city. And in Sparks and the county, there's 500,000. In the state, there's about 2.4. So what have you found that's unique about starting your business here and the challenges you've had?
So there are challenges here, but there's also some huge sort of unfair advantages of being in a city this small, I would say. So in California, I grew up in Orange County, and then I went to school in New York City, and then also had a little stint in Seattle in grad school. And in those larger cities, you see that there's a kind of a higher barrier to entry in any vertical. So not just startups, but any job, any vertical, in the economy. And in Reno, what's interesting is that you can go. I mean, last week I just had a meeting with Kate Marshall, right, the treasurer of the state treasurer.
Right. No,
and I just had a coffee meeting with her.
You're very close to your government here. Unbelievably
super close to the government.
I see the governor all the time. I saw the governor eating ice cream the other day.
Yeah.
I lives close. His family's here, and he's up at the Capitol.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very, very small.
And they're usually, you can almost have a personal meeting with any of those people at a coffee shop. That's something unheard of, in any other city. The other thing is very helpful for small businesses. Besides there's warehouse tax for larger companies that get a break on their warehouse taxes. But no state income tax, of course. But they're really friendly in helping small businesses get started. You have the SBA up at UNR. You have even the city government when you go to get your city business license. Super helpful and kind, and so I think there's a lot of benefits to being here.
That's so true what you just said. Even with the state, you go into the state and it's very small.
Yeah, and it's not so. It's funny. It's not backwards though. I mean, you go to the DMV, right, and now you can check
online,
go online. Yeah, how long the wait is online.
Right, but you can go online and do most of your work in the DMV.
Yeah,
just like California, but that's like any state now.
Yeah.
But the Secretary of State's office is super small. I mean, you could never break into California. By the way, just a side note, it's a small world. Ashley and I were born in the same hospital.
Yeah, that is funny.
And this is 45 million people in California, and
that is pretty funny.
And so no, that's true what you said. So going forward, how does someone start a business? How does a woman start a business? How anybody really? Because it doesn't make a difference whether men or women. But what are the differences? What are the differences you see
in men and women starting
businesses? Yeah, and the challenges they have. Do women have more challenges than men, vice versa, in certain businesses?
Yeah. So what I see, there's a couple of things, and I've learned a lot, and I don't have a huge sample group because I only had 6 companies, so I had about 12 women in the program.
Uh-huh.
But what I've seen also just around the nation when I go to other female startup events is that women tend to be a little bit more risk averse. So that really helps if they're investors because they can sit on things longer. But where it doesn't help is that what you see a lot of is you see really successful women in business that a lot of times they will have come into an already established company, and they will have come in there as a certain position. So maybe they come in as a COO, and then they establish some great new processes, and they might improve the company culture, improve human resources, things like that. And then they'll do some really great things and turn the company around. And then maybe it goes a company that was maybe flailing a little bit can go, from $10 million in revenue to $70 million in revenue in, a 5-year period or something like that. So you'll see that happen a lot, but you won't see a woman start out with an idea and think that she's just going to conquer the world with that idea, and dream really big, and then go after a huge market, a $1 billion market, and then go get some investors to buy into her idea. Like, that doesn't really cross women's minds generally. They're starting to catch on because it's so popular right now, the idea of doing your own startup, or glamorized. But honestly, like, I don't see a lot of women doing that. Even a couple things happen. Usually women they will start a small business. Say they're really good at cooking, right? And their family thinks they're really good at cooking. They'll go and they'll start a soup, soup kitchen, soup and salad
Right.
kitchen.
Generally, restaurants is one of the places they break in. My grandmother did that during World War II and after World War II.
Exactly. So restaurants,
very large
boutiques.
Yeah.
They know how to curate clothes,
Mhm.
And be a buyer, so they'll start their own boutique. And these are great businesses, and some of them do really well. And I think, as a fellow from the SBA reminded me, like 90% of our jobs come from small business. So it's not a bad thing. Small business is great, but trying to get women to break into the startup scene is hard because not only are they risk averse, but they also want to be the expert if they're going to start it. So they'll wait for, like, a good parallel is women running for office, right? For political office. Somebody will tell a guy, oh, I think you should run for office, and they'll do it, right? But it'll take women like 7 times on average they'll have to hear it 7 times from 7 different people before they'll actually go forward with it. So we're just seeing a difference in women like to be the expert before they go forward. Men will tend to sort of jump in with 2 feet, even if they're not the expert, and they'll learn as they go. And those things, while they can be great characteristics and traits, like I said, if women are investing in things like that, it's not exactly the optimal environment for running a startup, right?
So what do you think the optimal environment is for running a startup? And what do you define a startup? Is that where you have Class A funding? Or
pretty much.
This is more than just a...
So you can bootstrap a startup, but startups generally what we use, startup has now become sort of a blanket term for any business. People just use it for, if it's a food truck, they call it a startup. If it's a restaurant, they call it a startup. I'm talking about...
And you hear the word lean startup, too.
Yes.
Which is really just a homegrown business, one step at a time. A lean startup, isn't it?
Yes, so a lean startup came from a term from a professor at Stanford named Steve Blank, and it was then taken on by Eric Ries, another fellow who kind of turned it into this really perfected model of basically lean startup is simply coming up with an idea and then prototyping it. It's a very iterative, very short cycle way of doing a business so that you're not wasting very much money or time.
Right.
Yeah.
You definitely have this concept down. You mentioned Seth Godin.
Seth Godin, yes.
Yeah, you've heard and studied Seth Godin in startups. He's this evolution of new type of business model. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Now, I see a divide. I interview people from in the 20s up into even 95 who've been business people. And along the way, there's definitely a divide. Some people who are in their 50s and 60s understand what you're saying in some detail because they've studied it, but most don't.
Yes.
Most people, once you cross over even 35 now, there's a breakdown in 2 different cultures, communications, and systems. The new technology, new media, has really gained hold on 35 and under. And that's where you're coming from.
Exactly.
I'm going to learn from you because I need to really delve down into more of these details that you're talking about. Now, I have a group of people, a volunteer group that's mostly 50 and over, that we meet, and I can tell you they're lost. They are seeing a little bits of it. I put, like we're doing a Google Hangout here. They're lost on the communication systems. They're afraid of it, some people, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. I think we're going to break through that barrier, but I'm not sure how. But your generation definitely has it. If you don't mind, about how old are you?
I'm 32.
So you're right on. The 32-year-olds right now have got all this technology. You've probably had a computer most of your life, haven't you? Or around or the internet?
Yes.
That you can remember? Yeah, my son's...
Well, dial-up was like the first internet I was...
Yeah, my son is 28. Did I get that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing he's that old. And he's had that technology, but you're just a little bit older than he is. But it's interesting to see the evolution and what you're talking about. By the way, I thought you were younger.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yay.
I thought you were like in your 20s.
Yay.
So that's good. And how old are your kids?
They're 12 and 14.
12 and, wow.
Yeah.
12 and 14. They keep you busy.
Yeah, they're so cool. They're one just started Reno High football.
Oh, Reno High?
Super excited.
Is he a freshman?
Yeah, he's going to be a freshman.
I have a daughter who's 14 who's going to be a freshman.
Oh my gosh, they'll probably meet each other.
Reno, yeah.
Too funny. So he's going into the Red House project.
Oh, okay. She's the Red House? I wish my daughter was going into the Red House. Red House is a technology-based.
That's right.
I wish she was going that direction.
Yeah, it'll
technology,
be interesting
graphic,
to see.
yeah,
AutoCAD. They teach AutoCAD.
Oh.
They have an amazing computer lab with all these Mac.
Right. No, I've heard every school in Reno has a different draw, and the Red House is a draw for Reno High. And Reno's the oldest school, and my daughter's all excited. Is your son excited about going?
Oh my gosh, he's so excited. He transferred from Sparks, so he was supposed to go to Reed. So he kind of is out of his element. And he's still excited, so that makes me happy. But it's not. Most of the kids aren't going from his middle school, are not going to Reno.
So how did that happen? Because of the Red House?
Red House project, yeah.
And because he's playing football, don't they have any issues? I know in California, if you go from one school to another, they're really.
Yeah,
really
he didn't start at Reed yet, so he just.
Okay.
It's just he went to Mendive and Sparks, so he would have naturally fed into Reed, but we had him apply for the Red House project.
I'm going on a tangent. What position does he play?
He plays safety.
Oh, good. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I was a safety. I love football.
Were you? Yeah, he's a great safety.
Well, we definitely got sidetracked there. So on your travel, so how long has the business been going now?
So it's like we're going on 2 years.
Wow, that's good.
But it didn't ramp up. I mean, it was about a year ago that it really started. I started hitting hard and really going full time on it.
So in finishing up here, what challenges have you had in the last 2 years, and what challenges do you have in front of you?
Yeah, so accelerator programs like the one I described, Techstars, it's sort of there's only been around for like 7 years, so the kinks haven't really been worked out completely, and the ones that we've seen that are successful, they've started with sort of a bankroll coming from the VCs that have started them, the venture capitalist firms. And so I've started, and I'm not a VC, right?
Right.
So I have that challenge to overcome.
Unless you're really wealthy.
Yes, and I'm not independently wealthy, and I'm not a VC. So I'm still looking for a model of. I'm still working on the fundraising pitch that I'm doing, and so I'm working with different organizations. And then in the spring, so we have this conference, Girl Empire, the one-day conference for high school girls, and that's more just to get out in the community and really start to get these girls at least primed for all this terminology that we're starting to see and use in the startup world that women are not necessarily accustomed to.
What age does that start at?
That starts at 14 and it ends at 18.
Interesting dynamic. I have a 14-year-old, like we just mentioned.
Yeah.
And I'm working with her. She's very sharp. Both my girls are sharp. They're stubborn but sharp sometimes, and they're athletes. So I'm trying to get them to help me with my business.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely, but they're more interested in a lot of other things.
Sounds about right.
I mean, they have so many more things on their mind. And when I was young, even though I did a lot of sports, I started working when I was 12 at a normal job by my home. I actually did a job of payroll, $1.65 an hour.
Oh, wow.
And I don't see that
same drive.
Yeah,
right?
they're entrepreneurs, they're artists, and they're good students. But I just don't see their interest in the business right now. I don't know if that's good or bad, but
I've seen the same thing. Honestly, my husband and I have both worked in startups or for ourselves for like the last 7 years, and or last 10 years, and neither of them. You would think that they would both, want to come down here and work. I mean, my husband's startup, they have boxes to fold,
right,
and things like that, and they could make some money, and they just don't have any desire or drive to do it. So we've taught, our 14-year-old, he knows some HTML and stuff like that, but he doesn't have any. Like I told him, I'm like, I could get you so many clients. You could start making money on building your own websites right now, and he has no desire or drive.
Isn't that strange? And my 12-year-old, she draws on AI. She's getting very good at AI, but that's because of the artistic side. She loves that, and she's a very, very solid student. But it's different, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I made a mistake, but maybe I didn't. I believe in putting technology in front of your kids. They have actually got iPhones. In retrospect, I might have just gone with, instead of the iPhone, the iPod.
iPod Touch, okay.
Which looks just like an iPhone. It can do
Yeah.
almost everything the same. In fact, you can make the Skype calls on it.
Exactly.
Set up, which isn't a bad technology. But anyway, interesting. You're finding the same challenges with your kids.
Yeah,
well,
very same.
We definitely sidetracked. I want to jump into the top questions. I call them the bluff questions.
Yeah.
First thing I ask, do you use a Mac or PC?
Mac.
Mac.
Yeah.
You ever use a PC or just a Mac?
I used to have a PC in grad school, and like it was a laptop, and about a year in, it just started crashing and going nuts. And I think I may have downloaded something, I don't know what happened, if there was some sort of malware that got through. But my husband actually went and bought a used, like for $400, he bought a used MacBook for me, the old white ones.
Okay, the old white ones. Yeah, because you
Yeah.
have a nice MacBook Pro now.
Yeah, and that's about 3 years old. But I had this used white MacBook for, probably 4 years, and that was used 4 years after I bought it used. And I never had another problem, so I was so grateful that I probably won't ever go back to PCs.
I have a MacBook Pro, started last year. It took a little bit of cultural shift because I'm really good on PCs and the engineering.
Yeah.
But I'm hooked with a MacBook Pro for durability and working with it. And I have an iMac that we just bought. I think I might, in retrospect, have gone with another MacBook Pro and got the screen instead of the iMac, but I had to try the iMac. It's older, but that's good. So what are your favorite technologies? And it can be an app, or what do you like to use or apply to your business?
I love WordPress. I know it's been around quite a while, and I know you do a podcast on WordPress for your business. And I love it. I think it's such a simple way to get people started, especially like looking back at the Lean Startup methodology. You really try. When I was consulting with female-owned businesses, the first thing I would do is get them set up on WordPress, and nobody needs to know that you're on WordPress. You can buy your own domain name. It doesn't have to be your domain at .wordpress.com. It doesn't have to look like that. You don't have to do the free version. But I just really appreciate how easy the back end is, and now a lot of the themes, I use Elegant Themes, but with Elegant Themes, their newer themes are all drag and drop. So you can actually build. It used to be that you'd have to go back into the back end and make a change, save, and then look at what the site pretty quickly,
I think you hit it right on the buttons. WordPress is amazing.
It's amazing.
But it's almost one step above Facebook in some aspects once you get it set up.
Yeah.
But you can go as far as you want to go with WordPress and make the most complicated sites that you can possibly imagine. I've gone with simplicity on my sites right now.
Okay.
But I work with Jonathan Denwood, who actually can make the most complicated WordPress sites and knows more than you can possibly imagine about the platform.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting environment. How long have you been working with WordPress?
6 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. So you probably know it inside and out.
I don't, because you know what? It's almost like, Photoshop or any of the AI Illustrator. It's like you tend to use like 10% of its capabilities.
Plus,
that's kind of how I use WordPress.
A plugin in itself can be a lot of information and knowledge and change. And you got to be very careful with plugins. That's why
I've crashed a couple of my sites with plugins. Yeah.
I always recommend you have two sites, one that you test and then one that you actually use for your business, and make sure you have a good backup. That's probably, from a business perspective, what I do in the program is I look at the business perspective of WordPress and how to hook WordPress into your business. Jonathan looks, well, here's my ideas. How do we take those ideas and create that web page to
Very cool.
make it work? And that's
the part that you're describing, I'm not that side, I'm more Jonathan's side.
Right.
So that's actually really important what you're talking about, the backups. So many times a website will crash, a WordPress website will crash because somebody added a plugin and it just didn't work with
if that's your business,
that version,
you can't have that happen.
Oh gosh, it's horrible.
Because your WordPress site on the online environment and the whole new world is really a critical part of business. Even if you had a painting company and you were scheduling for people and they were looking and colors, and there's so many things you can do with WordPress.
But it's fantastic.
So here's one of my favorite technologies. You talked about your favorite technology being really the WordPress and the plugins and the whole element. So what's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote comes from former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. and there is a special place in hell for women who don't help other women.
Very good. So that's sort of the back of your company too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing you asked earlier. What holds women back in startup? In what's the ideal environment for a woman to start a startup? And I think that having an environment where it's mostly women is helpful. A lot like, you see things like Wellesley or these all-female colleges. Like I went to Columbia and Barnard was across the street. And there's something about having an all-female environment that kept the women really sort of focused. And it's very low risk as far as, when you volunteer to ask questions or things like that. It happens more often, I believe, in all women environments. So the flip side of that, though, there's always a shadow side to every good thing, and the flip side is that women are also very competitive, so with each other, whereas you don't see that with men as much. So men will be competitive, but they'll still be friends. Women, if they're competitive with each other, they actually won't talk to each other.
I haven't read many books about, and I probably should, about the differences between men and women, especially with leadership. I've never delved into it, but there's a lot of people who speak or talk about the differences, about the competitive nature. There's a lot of advocates for women's schools because women actually come out with really close relationships.
Yes.
One thing I do notice is, and I have a son who's older and girls who are 12 and 14. My 14-year-old has some strong bonds, much stronger than I think I did when I was a young boy, and my son, towards her girlfriends that she's grown up with between the ages of 10 and 14. Because I moved the family here last year.
Okay.
And to catch up with me. Have you ever found anything of that nature with women? The closeness?
The closeness? Of the bonds? Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think women are more vulnerable with each other. So I see that with our son. He definitely doesn't go deep. He has to keep his cards close. And even he would kill me if he heard me say this, but I don't think he'll ever listen to this podcast, thankfully. But
you never know. It could be around forever.
It could be, yeah. But I think even I see him in football, and he comes home from football, and he talks very openly about how he has to wear a certain front at football because he's wired a little differently than all the other football players. So even his sense of humor, is a little bit more punny, not so slapstick. And so he has to hold those things back because if they knew how smart and, how smart he was and how kind of nerdy he was, I think he might get some flack for it. So you don't see that as much with girls. I think girls are a little bit more just, I am who I am, and they'll find other people who are like them in high school. Right. And the boys will just kind of, do what they have to do to survive, so to speak. And so I do see that. So the boys tend to have like shallower relationships, but in the same way, they seem to be able to not hold grudges. There's a little bit less intensity with the boys,
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely differences, and maybe I should have studied those over the years a little bit more.
Well, you sound like you're doing great. I mean, you're so open to, especially, you're what, 50?
I'm 57.
57?
Graduated West Point 1980.
It's amazing because you went to West Point. I remember I played soccer in college, and we went to West Point to play against the West Point women's soccer team. And we got there, and I think at a certain time of the day, they shoot off maybe like a cannon or something?
Yeah, retreat. Yeah, you have to stop and salute.
Yeah, and literally I thought I should hit the deck. Like I thought something was going down. Like
on the plane. You were on the plane.
Yeah, and so
that plane is the field we marched.
There's
a lot of sports activities and all that. You said yes. Columbia you went to school.
Yes.
That's neat.
Yes.
That's good. So, I didn't really go into any detail I wanted to, but you were born in Orange County. You went to New York you were raised in New York?
No, I grew up in Orange County, was raised there, and then I went to school at Columbia.
Okay, you went. That's interesting. That's like me. First time I ever went east was right after high school to go to West Point.
Okay,
the first time I saw the trees and the difference in the country.
Difference in seasons, yep. Right? The 4 seasons.
Oh yeah, it's different.
It's a trip, yeah. And the attitude's a little different on these things
Oh yeah,
too,
it's not
right?
California. And I grew up in California. Definitely cultures.
Definitely different cultures.
One thing I had studied, and thanks to the Army, I went back and studied anthropology and worked in special programs as an engineer.
But interesting.
I really have looked back and said, man, there's differences in cultures around the world, or even in the United States, and within states, or going from Sacramento to here, huge difference.
Yeah. Oh yeah, huge. For Sacramento just to here, yeah.
Yeah, over the hill.
It's a huge difference. I think the other thing that to mention, actually, I like what you said about the anthropology, learning about the anthropology and differences in cultures. Another thing that we see statistically speaking is that the more diverse, say, a board is of a large corporation, so the more equality that we see between males and females, like 50-50 board actually brings in more revenues for investors. So you're seeing some great statistics around the idea of diversity on boards and in C-level suite jobs.
Right.
And there actually being a positive monetary benefit from that. So.
You know, I could see that. I definitely believe in that. It's funny. And I have been involved in politics prior to 9/11 in my community city. And it's sort of a passion. You get into politics and it sort of sticks with you. And I still am into politics around here. And within my business or in this podcast or on-demand radio, I try to be as totally nonpartisan and to be nonpartisan with my political show. But I was asked to volunteer, and I help a group, and I almost hate to say it sometimes, it's a Republican Men's Club.
Oh, okay.
And in California, I don't know of any men's clubs that exist.
Okay, yeah.
They still exist here in Nevada, and they do like their men's clubs, but I'd rather see something, and I help them in the backside, but I'd rather see something come to men and women. But they have women's clubs here, and they have the men's club.
Yeah, interesting.
But a group like the Commonwealth, I've got the domain name, the Nevada Commonwealth, and my goal someday is to create a group of both men and women called the Commonwealth.
Okay.
And broader in their perspective and their focus on bringing great speakers to the area here in Las Vegas to speak once a quarter.
Okay.
That's my goal, because I think you do lose something when you have all men or all women, even though there are some things that evolve from both sides because they think differently. But I think you'll get better ideas and better thoughts with that mixed board, just like you said.
I agree.
100%. And that doesn't exist here. At least in the party that I'm in, we don't have that common group within the club, and I think it's a good thing to do. Now, California has really gone away from, Silicon Valley even, I think, is doing a better job at bringing men and women together for ideas and thoughts, because in the long run, you're better off.
Yeah, you definitely are,
and I think
no doubt.
Everything you said about collecting money, so on and so forth.
Yeah, there's some great stats on that.
So we've got to finish up here. Our
Okay.
time in our little studio will dissipate here. So what's your favorite book?
Favorite book is, gosh, I like anything by Seth Godin.
Very good.
I like
Purple Cow.
Purple Cow's good.
We could actually come back and just talk about Seth Godin.
Yeah, he's great. I really like him. I think my biggest, there's a book called Fail Fast, and I really like the concept of that, of failing fast and failing often, and I think that really lends itself, that idea really lends itself to taking larger risks.
How do you fail fast?
So the easiest way to fail fast is just fail fast means just, it's like knowing when to quit, right?
Yeah.
Like, if something isn't working and you can't see it working or turning out, once you see that it's not going to work, no matter how much you grind it out, just moving on to the next idea.
Right, stay properly.
Yep.
The other thing is, as we go on, what's the best advice that you've ever received?
Gosh, I can't think of the best advice. I don't know of one thing, but I would say that the best thing I've ever heard people say to me, or what's sort of like the sweetest thing to hear, is just, I love when people give me honest feedback. So no matter what stage I'm at, if somebody can give me honest feedback and say, you know what, I don't think this is going to work, or I don't like that, because it's very easy just to, to be kind of a yes man, so to speak, when people are talking. And I love when people who are close to me can tell me straight up what they see, where I can improve and things like that. So. Okay,
Ashley, and then tying it all together and finishing up, when you're not working or running your business or taking care of your kids, so they're a lot of work too, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
And your husband probably takes some time.
Yeah,
you guys work
yeah,
together. I know my wife does a lot for me.
Yeah.
And she actually has a business too. So, and the kids, and we
Oh my
try
gosh.
to handle both. I like it though. We try to, we help each other. I like to actually do more with the kids than I'm doing right now. It's just that this startup in itself is taking a lot of work.
Yeah, which
So,
is.
what do you enjoy doing in your off time?
I'd really like to get back to more art. I used to do a lot more art and design work and like sort of interior design and upcycling and things like that. I would love to get back to that more. I've been a lot of my extra time right now I spend reading books or reading blogs that kind of relate to my
right.
But honestly, I love being with my family. I love just being home with them. And yeah, I wish I could say I have a ton of hobbies right now. We bought some tubes. So we've been tubing down the river lazily, and that's really nice.
Truckee?
Yeah.
It's really low right now, and it's perfect for tubing.
It's great. It's not dangerous at all. And
I have a really good raft, a river raft from my background. I've taken the girls down when it's higher and taught them about rafting. Their first cousin is a big-time rafter in the rivers in the West.
Yeah.
So we like to raft, but we're getting tubes. I'm going to go down the river in tubes. It's perfect right now. I mean, it's unusual.
Perfect.
As a kid, I used to tube some rivers, and it's perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Especially the lower Truckee right now. Do you ever go to the upper Truckee coming out of Tahoe?
I haven't done that one yet.
That's really nice. It's a little low right now, but it's nice when it's high and you bring a good raft down, but you can actually tube it right now, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's so beautiful.
And how many people can say that they could? I mean, I could literally leave work right now,
yep.
tube down an hour later and get picked, and tube right down to our office.
We do that all the time. I live up by Mayberry, and we can just launch and be picked up down here by the office.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one thing is this show has one sponsor. It's First Realty. It's my wife's company.
Oh, awesome.
So when I interview somebody from Reno, I always like to do a commercial for Reno Tahoe. And you just did the commercial.
Yay.
That's part of it.
Love Reno Tahoe. Love it here.
Yeah, I do. Actually, after living in California and around the world, I mean, it's hard to explain how much you could and it doesn't cost you anything to do these activities. We're just finishing up Reno as Art Town.
Yes.
It's been good.
It's been really good. Every night, walk right across the street to live music, and the Wingfield Park. And
from all over the world, too. The other thing that's about to happen is we have Hot August Nights kicking off at the end of the month, and that's always fun. And then the balloons and I
actually have an Airbnb. Our house, we rent a room out through Airbnb, and so we have some Hot August Nights people coming, and they wanted to make sure that we had driveway space for their vintage car.
I bet most people don't know what Airbnb is who I work with. I know what it is.
I don't think they do. They probably don't. There's actually 12 million users on there now.
If you're 30 and under, I think most people know. They use it all the time in Europe, all over the world, because you get to meet people, socialize. It's like basically bed and breakfast on steroids.
It totally is. And it's like you can live like a local, which is really kind of the neat part, I think, when you're traveling.
Very good. So pulling it all together, from this interview, what is the number one takeaway that you have, that we have, that the listeners should listen to?
I think first off, what you mentioned earlier, and this all ties in with kind of how I perceive you and the image that you sort of project, is that I think openness is huge. So if you're 25, 35, 45, 55, I think just being open to learning new things and new technologies, and understanding that this stuff is so stupid simple. Like, it takes a little while, and there's a lot of troubleshooting at first. You'll have to watch a couple YouTube tutorials, videos, and things like that. But there's always help out there. There's always, you can go to meetups at the Reno Collective. There's so many different avenues to get help if you get stuck. And I think it's just a matter of being open. And that all also applies to all this work I'm doing with female entrepreneurs as well. But also just being open, like you say. I really like your attitude about your girls and raising your girls and being 57 and being so open to learning more, and I think that sort of, you almost have like a childlike curiosity about you. I think if everybody at every age could have that, I think that would be just amazing.
You mentioned something that I think would be help is if you're older, you're not that 32 with all that technology. I kid you not, maybe just bite the bullet and go buy a basic MacBook Air.
Yep.
And you can watch and go and use the Apple Store to learn about it, and you'll start learning things you
oh my gosh.
can't imagine. It's your portal to the future.
It is.
Now, you know what Linda is, right?
Yes. Oh, talk a little bit about Linda, because I saw her speak at a conference a couple years ago.
Yeah, but yeah, she started it all. It's the
Yeah.
learn. We can't really go into it, but LYNDA. Just try it for $25 in 1 month. It's the best resource that I found for knowledge.
It's amazing.
You can learn anything. You don't need it. You can turn it on and off, but it's a great resource.
Great resource. Photoshop. You can learn anything on there.
Right. So I appreciate it. So how can we get a hold of you? Your website one more time, email,
sure.
contact.
It's girlma.de. So I'll spell it out for you. GIRL, M as in mom, A, D as in dog, E. And there's a period in between the A and the D.
Very good.
That's it.
So that's the easiest way, and we'll have that up on the show notes.
That's our website. And then you can also go to Girl Empire Con is short for conference.com.
And if you go to Bluff TV, you can spell Bluff any way you want it, blufftv.com, or you go into the full name, timelinesofsuccess.com. But what we find is people can find Bluff TV and then link into Timeline.
Nice.
In the show notes for this show, you'll find all those references and connections. Well, Ashley, I appreciate your time. It's a wonderful interview. I hope you can help us find more people who are that 28 to your age, 32, 35, who are tied in with this new world and technology. So I can help pass that information up to the people who are
Sure, I would love to help in any way I can.
Or even 95.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Very good. I wasn't as smooth as I should be today.
I'm never smooth on podcasts.